has done this, is the case still moot?
Are there any issues with standing as to the petitioners in the matter, being that they are now here in the country, their rights were protected according to the lower courts, and they really have no standing to continue to argue against the travel suspension?
Well, that's true. I mean, in effect, I guess you could argue that if they want to argue mootness, there is no further injury because the 90-day period is up. Standing is still an issue. Immigrants have some constitutional rights, depending, the scale of constitutional rights is a sliding scale. So, thankfully, the Supreme Court, 9-0, said that anyone who's never had any connection with the United States, you're not protected by the U.S. Constitution. You have zero constitutional rights. Now, the court did hold that the legal immigrants who brought this case, who wanted to bring in their family members, they do have some protection. So they're able to proceed with their case.
Technicalities aside and lawyer speak aside, does the president have the ability to issue an executive order to a part of the executive branch of government dealing with immigration, such as this travel pause, as you called it?
Absolutely. Not only was the president acting lawfully pursuant to the Immigration and Nationality Act, our main immigration law, Congress long ago authorized him to exclude any alien from the country if he deems them detrimental to our interests. However, statutory law is subject to constitutional law. So what the plaintiffs in this case have done is they've argued that he's not only exceeded his statutory authority by Congress, but he's violating constitutional rights. So they're arguing that, oh goodness, he's violating my stigmatizing me as a Muslim based on religion, and that violates the First Amendment. So that's and the lower courts basically ruled on the First Amendment issue, the religious discrimination argument. Although the Ninth Circuit did reject that and said, oh no, the president did not adequately explain why he was excluding these individuals.
What I don't understand what the lower courts did is how they could reach back to statements attributed to a candidate who is not a member of government and then use those statements for when the candidate becomes chief executive to demonstrate proof of some sort of executive intent for the action he took in office. It just doesn't add up to me.
Absolutely. It doesn't comply with precedent. It was a very unusual move for the court to accept statements by a then candidate. He wasn't speaking then on behalf of the United States. He was just a citizen. Once he became president, then we can argue about whether those statements should be accepted, and in past cases they have been at times. So, but here, as I stated, the First Amendment was being used as the reason that this is unlawful. Well, it's pitting the First Amendment against itself because a candidate has free speech, and political speech is highly protected by the Supreme Court. So basically, we have this free speech, First Amendment clashing with this alleged right of discrimination based on his pre-inauguration statement.
I'm just baffled because even if you do take what he said during the campaign, I still don't see how a court can say what he did was somehow not correct. I mean, if the president has the authority through through statutes passed by Congress, any class of immigrant. I mean, I think back to like World War II. If Nazis were in multiple countries and they were coming here and causing havoc, and there was no way to vet these people, would anyone argue that a list of countries that contain high numbers of these people, we'd have to do some extreme vetting? No. So he didn't ban Muslims. It wasn't every Muslim country. It was 6, I think it was. 6 countries that President Obama, I believe.
And none of them was the largest Muslim country or the largest Arab country. So how can you claim that it was discrimination against either religion or a class of people?
Well, here's the absurdity of the opposition's argument, the plaintiff's argument. If the lower court's decisions, rulings were to stand, anyone who was a part of ISIS is a religious organization. They have a religious leader.
There's no Catholic sect of ISIS, as far as I know.
Correct. But anyone would have standing who has a relative or belong to ISIS in the country to enjoin the president. The president said during the State of the Union he wants to eradicate ISIS. Does that sound like discrimination to you? Does that sound like he's saying I want to wipe them off the earth? Well, why wouldn't they have standing to challenge him in his war on ISIS? It's a religion, so they could use the same argument. It's absurd what the lower courts have.
And this is why I love you guys, but when lawyers get involved and stuff, and that's what all, Supreme Court, all these high-ranking lawyers get involved, you wind up arguing over nonsensical things. It's common sense what the president's trying to do.
Well, wait, here we go now. The idea of bona fide relationship. To me, that's going to be rife with facts and circumstances tests for lower courts to adjudicate, and it's going to create a new type of litigation going forward. Do you feel that the court kind of slipped up in this compromise of bona fide relationship and opened up to further litigation?
Absolutely. The Supreme Court, although 9-0, invalidated some of the preliminary injunction and said that if you have no connection whatsoever to the United States, you have no constitutional right. That was an important victory for President
The fact
Trump.
that the court even had to say that speaks volumes for the argument.
Yes, I absolutely agree. And it was terrifying that lower courts actually ruled that individuals have a constitutional right who have no connection here. But the court narrowed the injunction to only apply to people who have provable, credible, close family relationships in the same shoes as the plaintiffs in the lawsuits who wanted to bring his wife, another a mother-in-law. So, and I've heard it reported that the government is going to interpret that to mean spouses, immediate family members, children, not grandparents and not cousins. So they're not going
and not siblings as well. Should the court have gone the way of what Justices Gorsuch, Alito, and Thomas wanted in just going further and not cutting the baby in half here?
Absolutely. It's the right thing. And as the dissent that you just pointed out, they noted that the court found that President Trump's likely to win on the merits. Well, in order to get a stay, you have to show that you're likely to win. Well, the court went straight from likely to win to balancing of the equities. Okay, it's going to harm these plaintiffs and people with close family relationships, so let's just keep the preliminary injunction while the case proceeds through the Supreme Court. Government, your interest in national security, not so important.
It was a political decision by the court in that respect for us.
And I mean, feelings aside, okay, somebody's spouse is trying to come here, but if it's any class of immigrant that the president has the power to temporarily put a halt on, I don't understand why this is even a discussion.
Because it's politics.
Well, let me reiterate, as you stated, this only applies to 6 countries, and those countries were designated as terror risks by President Obama. So Trump didn't make some political decision. He didn't pull these countries out of his hat. They were already designated as risk countries, and we're talking about countries who do not have adequate documentation on like birth certificates and whatnot because they've collapsed to the point where there's no way to vet these people.
Yeah, we joked around about this the other day saying, let's pull his driving abstract from the Syrian DMV. It's like it doesn't exist in these places.
Absolutely. So this is what President Trump's trying to do. It's not a Muslim ban. It's not a ban, period. It's a pause just for 90 days so the government can, upgrade its vetting procedures. Number 2, can assess each of these countries to determine what documents they have available.
So look into your crystal ball real quick. Where is the Supreme Court going to go on this when it's all said and done?
Well, the court has put it at the top of its calendar in October. They could rule as early as December. Usually only unanimous opinions are delivered in December. It could go as late as June or July. But I feel that when the court gets to the merits of the case, Trump will be victorious.
And will the Immigration Reform Law Institute be submitting any briefs with this case?
We've submitted briefs in the lower courts, the appellate courts, and we submitted one asking the court to accept this case on appeal in the Supreme Court, which they did, and we will be submitting briefs on the merits when that time comes.
This is the sexy part of the law that I really wanted to get into when I was in law school. Dale, if people want to find out more about you or the Immigration Reform Law Institute, tell them how they can.
You can go to our website, www.early.org. That's IRLI.org. We're on Twitter @EarlyLaw, and obviously we're on Facebook.
All right, Dale, thanks for coming on the show, man. And last minute, by the way, I really appreciate you squeezing us in.
Thank you for having me.
Behind Enemy Lines. Gene and Russ, back behind enemy lines, joined now by the National Vice President of the National Border Patrol Council and a Border Patrol officer himself, Hector Garza. Hector, awesome to have you on, man.
Thank you for having me. I really, really appreciate it.
Listen, you guys have been rocking and rolling. I mean, I don't want to talk about the competition or nothing, but there's another radio show across the way from us that Hector hosts, and they've been rocking it today, Russ.
Actually, tell us about it. It's the Green Line.
Yeah. So it's a Green Line. It's a radio show that the National Border Patrol Council holds, and it's the only radio show that's hosted by active Border Patrol agents. We're pretty much it's run by myself, Hector Garza, Art Del Cueto, who's out of the Tucson sector, and Chris Cabrera, who's out of the Rio Grande Valley sector, out down there in South Texas.
So, for those of us who don't understand the organization of the U.S. Border Patrol, and you're talking about sectors, you know, I'm a guy from the Northeast that knows absolutely nothing. Explain to us how the organizational structure works.
So we, at the very top, we have the Department of Homeland Security, followed by Customs and Border Protection, and then followed by the Office of Border Patrol. That's where we come in, Border Patrol agents. We are located along the nation's borders. We have 16 different sectors along the border, and it's divided up by sectors. For example, I'm from the Laredo sector, which is in South Texas. And we have other sectors like the Tucson sector, the San Diego sector, and so on and so forth.
It's got to be a massive undertaking to even manage just one sector. I mean, the Laredo sector, I got to think, is an absolute hotbed, right?
Yeah, so anything in Texas right now is very, very, very busy for us. We have a lot of crossings. We know that since President Trump took office, some of those numbers came down. The apprehensions were lowered. The crossings were lowered. But something that did not go down were the actual drug apprehensions. Those are continuing to today.
How is the morale in the department or the agency? I'm curious. I mean, coming from New York and being Republicans outnumbered over there, I would imagine that the morale for the past 8 years prior to Donald Trump was pretty low.
So you're absolutely right. The past 8 years, our morale was really, really, really low. The National Border Patrol Council, that which represents Border Patrol agents, we ended up endorsing Donald Trump. Our agents were very happy that we endorsed Donald Trump. We're glad that we endorsed him because Donald Trump is all for border security. President Trump has openly supported our agents, and as soon as Donald Trump won on November 8th, the morale started going up. And we're really, really, really happy for that.
And, a lot of people were shocked when and President Trump himself was touting it. It's the first time that the Border Patrol Union has endorsed a Republican in its history, or however many years he was quoting. But we spoke about this with a previous guest. Democrats prior to Barack Obama were not that far off on immigration stances to where Republicans are today. I don't know what happened since the election of Barack Obama to where the left went off the deep end. Basically, they want no enforcement. I don't even think they want a border patrol.
I guess that's all politics, right? We do know that from our perspective as Border Patrol agents, this is real life. This is life and death. And if we don't have a leader that supports us or supports border security or Border Patrol agents, that's something that can get people killed. Not only our agents in the front line, but also the American public. I mean, we've had numerous victims that have fallen prey to a lot of the crimes that are committed by illegal aliens.
Okay, so I want to jump in one more question real quick here, Gene, before you take over again. So, a lot of attention is given to our brothers south of the border, from Mexico, Central America, South America, that come across. But on our Mexican border, there's a phenomenon or a term that's not used enough in the media, I don't think, is OTM, other than Mexicans. What is the real threat on our southern border of someone from the Middle East, instead of sneaking over some cocaine or whatever white powder, instead of that being cocaine, being anthrax?
So the threat is very, very real. Now, a lot of people focus a lot on people that are coming from South America and Central America. But in all reality, we get people that cross into our country from all over the world. You're talking about Syrians, you're talking about Bangladesh, Brazilians, you name it. We get people from all over the world, and that's what makes the Border Patrol Agency a very unique law enforcement agency, because we deal with people from all walks of life, from all over the world. Some of those people that are coming to work and find a better life, but some of those people are very dangerous criminals that have committed very ugly crimes in their countries, and that are also looking to commit those same crimes in the United States. So there's a real threat. We know that last year we did have Syrians show up at the border. So clearly, what that shows is that there is a means and a method for people from the Middle East to make it all the way to the United States. We saw it last year. We see it all the time. People from China come here as well. So if people from China can get to the United States, guess what? You can get people from the Middle East.
That's a